What if I told you that everything you've been taught about learning English is completely wrong? Right now, there are millions of people who know more English words than some native speakers. Yet they can't order coffee without breaking into a cold sweat. There's a woman named Sarah who spent 12 years studying English, memorized over 15,000 vocabulary words, and can recite Shakespeare. But when her American colleague asked her about weekend plans, she stood there speechless. This isn't a story about lack of talent or intelligence. This is about falling into what I call the 300-word trap. And today, I'm going to show you exactly how to escape it. By the end of this video, you'll understand why chasing big words is sabotaging your fluency and how mastering just 300 simple words can transform you from a silent observer to a confident English speaker. The secret I'm about to share will completely change how you approach English learning forever. Picture this scenario. You've been studying English for years. Your vocabulary app shows impressive statistics. You've completed multiple courses and your grammar knowledge is solid. Yet, when someone starts a casual conversation, your mind goes blank. You know the word magnificent, but you can't use good naturally in conversation. You understand complex academic texts, but struggle to express simple thoughts like, "I'm running late," or "That sounds interesting." This frustrating experience affects millions of English learners worldwide, and the reason is simpler than you might think. Most traditional English teaching methods focus on breadth instead of depth. They encourage you to learn as many words as possible, creating the illusion that more vocabulary equals better communication. But here's what nobody tells you about how language actually works in real conversations. Native English speakers don't wake up thinking about using impressive vocabulary. When they're chatting with friends, ordering food, or discussing their day, they rely on a surprisingly small set of words that they use with incredible flexibility and natural rhythm. Research conducted by linguistics professors at major universities reveals something that will shock you. In typical daily conversations, native speakers use approximately 1,000 to 1,500 different words throughout an entire day. But here's the truly amazing part that changes everything about how you should approach English learning. Within that relatively small group of words, just 300 core words account for roughly 65% of everything that gets said in casual, everyday English conversations. This means that if you can master these 300 fundamental words and use them naturally and automatically, you can participate in 2/3 of any English conversation that happens around you. Let me break down why this 300-word approach is so revolutionary for English learners. When you focus on collecting thousands of vocabulary words, your brain treats each word as a separate item to remember. It's like trying to remember a phone number with 10,000 digits. Your working memory gets overloaded, and when you need to speak quickly, you can't access most of those words efficiently. But when you deeply master 300 core words, something magical happens in your brain. These words become automatic responses, requiring no conscious effort to recall or use. They flow out naturally, just like in your native language. Think about how you use basic words in your own language. You don't stop to think about grammar rules or word definitions. You just speak. This is exactly what happens when you truly master these 300 English words instead of superficially knowing thousands. The flexibility of simple words is absolutely incredible when you understand how to use them properly. Take the word get, for example. Most English learners think get is too simple or basic to focus on. They prefer words like obtain, acquire, or procure. But native speakers use get in dozens of different ways throughout every single day. Get up, get in, get out, get ready, get going, get better, get worse, get along, get through, get over, get around, get back, get ahead, get back, get ready, get going, get better, get wordy, get better, get worse, get along, get through, get over, get around, get back, get ahead, get back, get around. Each combination creates a completely different meaning, and native speakers use these combinations automatically without thinking. When you master how to use simple words like get in multiple contexts, you're actually learning to think like a native speaker. You're developing the natural word patterns that make English flow smoothly and sound completely natural. This brings us to one of the biggest mistakes that English learners make without realizing it. They assume that using bigger, more sophisticated words makes them sound more intelligent or professional. In reality, the opposite is often true. When you use overly complex vocabulary in casual situations, you sound unnatural and sometimes even pretentious. Native speakers notice this immediately because it doesn't match how they naturally communicate. Imagine someone saying, "I must commence my vehicular journey to the commercial establishment to procure sustenance," instead of simply saying, "I need to go to the store to buy food." The first sentence is technically correct and uses impressive vocabulary, but it sounds robotic and awkward. The second sentence uses simple words but communicates the exact same message clearly and naturally. This is why mastering simple words with perfect fluency will make you sound much more natural than knowing complex words that you use awkwardly. The confidence factor in language learning cannot be underestimated, and this is where the 300-word method really shines. When you know that you can express almost any idea using words you've completely mastered, you stop worrying about forgetting vocabulary in the middle of conversations. You know that even if you can't remember a specific complex word, you can always communicate your meaning using the simple words you know perfectly. This confidence is visible to others when you speak. Your voice becomes stronger, your pace becomes more natural, and your overall communication becomes more effective. People respond better to confident speakers who use simple language clearly than to nervous speakers who occasionally throw in impressive vocabulary. Confidence in communication comes from knowing you can always find a way to express yourself, not from having the biggest vocabulary possible. Most English learners approach vocabulary building like they're preparing for a spelling bee or academic exam. They create long lists of words organized by topic or difficulty level. They use flashcard apps with hundreds of new words every week. They memorize definitions and example sentences from textbooks. But here's what they miss completely. Real conversation isn't about recalling perfect definitions or textbook examples. Real conversation requires you to use words spontaneously, creatively, and in combinations that textbooks never taught you. When you focus on deeply understanding and practicing 300 core words, you learn how these words actually behave in real conversations. You discover their flexibility, their common combinations, and their natural rhythm. You stop thinking of words as isolated vocabulary items and start thinking of them as tools that you can combine creatively to express any idea you want to communicate. The research behind this approach is absolutely fascinating and will change how you think about language learning forever. Linguists have studied millions of hours of natural English conversations from movies, TV shows, podcasts, and real-life interactions. They discovered that language follows what's called the Pareto principle or the 80-20 rule. A small percentage of words are used the vast majority of the time, while thousands of less common words appear only occasionally. The top 100 most common English words account for about 50% of all spoken language. The top 300 words cover approximately 65% of typical conversations. The top 1,000 words cover around 80% of everyday speech. This means that after those first 300 words, each additional word you learn gives you much smaller improvements in your ability to understand and participate in conversations. You get massive returns on the first 300 words and diminishing returns on everything after that. Understanding how native speakers actually learn and use language will revolutionize your entire approach to English. Native speakers don't consciously learn vocabulary as children. Instead, they hear the same core words thousands of times in different contexts until these words become completely automatic. A native English-speaking child hears words like go, come, get, have, do, make, take, and give hundreds of times every week. By the time they're adults, these words are so deeply embedded in their minds that they can use them instantly in any situation without conscious thought. This is exactly the level of mastery you need with your 300 core words. You want to use them so naturally that you never hesitate. Never second-guess yourself, and never worry about making mistakes with them. When you reach this level with simple words, adding more complex vocabulary becomes much easier because you have a solid foundation to build on. The practical implementation of this method requires a complete shift in how you study and practice English. Instead of spending time learning new words every day, you'll spend time getting more creative and flexible with the words you already know. For example, if one of your 300 words is make, you should practice using it in as many different ways as possible. Make breakfast, make plans, make friends, make mistakes, make progress, make sense, make time. Make money, make decisions, make changes, make noise, make peace. Each combination teaches you something new about how English actually works. You're not just memorizing vocabulary. You're learning the natural patterns and rhythms that make English sound fluent and native-like. This approach takes the same amount of study time as traditional vocabulary memorization, but it produces dramatically better results in your actual speaking ability. Let me share a story that perfectly illustrates why this approach works so well in real-world situations. There's a student named Carlos who tried both methods. For 6 months, he used traditional vocabulary building techniques. He learned 50 new words every week using flashcards and vocabulary apps. By the end of 6 months, he knew over 1,000 additional English words. But when he tried to have conversations, he still struggled to express himself naturally. Then he switched to the 300-word method. He stopped learning new words completely and focused only on mastering 300 basic words that he already knew passively. He practiced using these words in different combinations every day. He recorded himself speaking using only these words. After just 2 months of this focused practice, his conversation skills improved more than they had in the previous 6 months of vocabulary memorization. He could express complex ideas clearly, respond quickly in conversations, and most importantly, he felt confident speaking English. The psychological aspect of language learning plays a huge role in your success. And the 300-word method addresses this in ways that traditional approaches miss completely. When you're trying to remember thousands of vocabulary words during a conversation, part of your mental energy goes toward word recall instead of idea expression. Your brain is working overtime trying to access the perfect word from your large vocabulary database, which slows down your response time and makes you sound hesitant. But when you're working with a smaller set of perfectly mastered words, your brain can focus entirely on expressing your ideas clearly and connecting with the person you're talking to. You stop performing vocabulary tricks and start having genuine conversations. This shift from performance mode to communication mode is what separates truly fluent speakers from people who simply know a lot of English words. Common objections to this method usually center around the fear of sounding too simple or basic. Many English learners worry that using simple words will make them appear less intelligent or educated. This concern is completely understandable but ultimately misguided. In professional and academic contexts, native speakers do use more sophisticated vocabulary when appropriate. However, even in these settings, they build their communication on a foundation of simple, clear expression. They use complex words strategically, not constantly. They know that the most important thing is being understood clearly and quickly. When you master simple words first, you can always add more complex vocabulary later for specific situations. But if you never master simple words, even your complex vocabulary won't save you in everyday conversations. Think of simple words as your reliable foundation and complex words as decorative elements you can add when needed. The beauty of focusing on 300 core words is that these words appear in virtually every type of English you'll encounter. Whether you're watching movies, listening to podcasts, reading news articles, or having conversations, these same 300 words show up constantly. This means that every time you consume English content, you're reinforcing the words you're trying to master. It's like getting extra practice without additional study time. When you were learning thousands of random vocabulary words, most of them rarely appeared in real content, so you didn't get natural reinforcement. But with core words, every English video you watch and every article you read becomes a practice session for your target vocabulary. This natural reinforcement accelerates your progress and helps these words become truly automatic in your mind. Understanding the difference between passive and active vocabulary is crucial for implementing this method successfully. Passive vocabulary consists of words you recognize and understand when you see or hear them. Active vocabulary consists of words you can actually use spontaneously in your own speaking and writing. Most English learners have passive vocabulary that's much larger than their active vocabulary. They might recognize 10,000 words when reading, but only be able to use 500 words when speaking. The 300-word method focuses specifically on converting passive vocabulary into active vocabulary. You're taking words you already recognize and making them available for instant use in real conversations. This is much more efficient than constantly adding new passive vocabulary that you may never learn to use actively. The goal is to shrink the gap between what you understand and what you can actually say. Let's talk about the specific types of words that should make up your 300-word foundation. These aren't random words chosen arbitrarily. They're the words that carry the most communicative power in English. You need approximately 100 nouns that represent the most common things, people, and concepts in daily life. Words like house, car, food, work, family, friend, time, day, year, money, phone, computer, book, school, doctor, store, city, country. These nouns let you talk about the physical world and social relationships that dominate most conversations. You need about 100 verbs that represent the most frequent actions and states. Words like go, come, get, have, do, make, take, give, see, know, think, feel, want, need, like, love, help, work, live, play, eat, drink, sleep, wake, start, stop, try, learn. These verbs let you describe almost any action or state of being you'll need in conversation. The remaining 100 words should include the most useful adjectives, adverbs, prepositions, and connecting words. Adjectives like good, bad, big, small, new, old, hot, cold, easy, hard, important, different, special, beautiful, interesting. Prepositions like in, on, at, to, from, with, for, about, down, over, under. Connecting words like and, but, or, so, because, when, where, how, why, which. These words are the glue that holds your sentences together and lets you express relationships between ideas. Without these connecting words, even if you know thousands of nouns and verbs, your speech will sound choppy and unnatural. But when you master these simple connecting words, you can create smooth, flowing sentences that sound completely natural to native speakers. Here's the practice routine that will transform these 300 words from passive knowledge into active fluency. Every morning, select just 5 words from your list. Don't try to work with more than 5 words at once because your brain needs to focus deeply on each word to make it truly automatic. For each of these 5 words, create 10 different sentences throughout the day. Don't just write them down. Speak them out loud with natural rhythm and intonation. Use these words in different contexts, with different emotions, and in different types of sentences. Make statements, ask questions, express opinions, tell stories. The key is variety and repetition. You want to use each word so many times and in so many different ways that it becomes impossible for your brain to forget how to use it naturally. After 1 week with the same 5 words, they should feel completely automatic when you speak. The transformation that happens when you truly master these core words is remarkable and often surprises students who try this method. Instead of hesitating while searching through thousands of vocabulary words, you start speaking immediately because you know your core words will always be available. Your speech becomes more fluid because you're not constantly stopping to remember more impressive words. Your pronunciation improves because you're using the same words repeatedly until they sound natural. Your listening comprehension increases because you recognize these core words instantly when others use them. Most importantly, your confidence skyrockets because you know you can express virtually any idea using words you've completely mastered. This confidence changes how others perceive you and how willing they are to engage in longer conversations with you. Many students ask whether using simple words will limit their ability to express complex or sophisticated ideas. This question reveals a fundamental misunderstanding about how language actually works. The most profound ideas in human history have often been expressed using remarkably simple language. Consider phrases like, I have a dream, love is all you need, or think different. These powerful statements use only the most basic English words, yet they communicate complex emotions and concepts that resonate with millions of people. The secret isn't in using complicated words, it's in using simple words creatively and with emotional authenticity. When you master simple words, You can combine them in countless ways to express nuanced thoughts, complex emotions, and sophisticated ideas. The limitation isn't in the words themselves, it's in how creatively and flexibly you can use them. Professional situations often worry English learners who are considering the 300-word approach. They fear that using simple vocabulary will make them appear unprofessional or unintelligent in work environments. This concern misses an important point about professional communication. The most successful professionals are those who can explain complex ideas in simple terms that everyone can understand. They use technical vocabulary when necessary, but they build their communication on a foundation of clear, simple language. When you master the 300-word foundation, you can always add industry-specific vocabulary for your professional needs. But without that foundation, even professional vocabulary won't help you communicate effectively in meetings, presentations, or casual workplace conversations. Simple, clear communication is always more professional than complex communication that confuses your audience. The timing aspect of this method is crucial for success and requires a shift in how you think about language learning progress. Traditional vocabulary building gives you the immediate satisfaction of learning something new every day. You can check off new words on your list and feel like you're making progress. The 300-word method requires more patience because the progress is less visible day by day. You're not learning new words, you're deepening your relationship with words you already know. This might feel slow at first, but the results compound dramatically over time. After 30 days of focused practice with your core words, you'll notice significant improvements in your speaking fluency. After 60 days, these words will feel completely natural. After 90 days, you'll be amazed at how much you can express using such a limited vocabulary. The key is trusting the process even when daily progress feels minimal. Real-world application of this method requires you to change how you interact with English content outside of your study time. Instead of looking up every unknown word you encounter while watching movies or reading articles, focus on noticing how your 300 core words are being used in different contexts. Pay attention to the rhythm, intonation, and combinations you hear. When you watch English content, don't worry about understanding every single word. Focus on catching the core words you're mastering, and notice how native speakers use them naturally. This approach turns every English movie, song, or conversation into a practice session for your target vocabulary. You're training your ear to recognize natural usage patterns while reinforcing the words you're trying to master. This passive reinforcement accelerates your progress without requiring additional study time. The fear of making mistakes often paralyzes English learners and prevents them from practicing speaking with their core vocabulary. This fear is completely counterproductive when you're trying to master simple words. Native speakers make mistakes with simple words all the time. They say me and my friend instead of my friend and I. They end sentences with prepositions. They use less instead of fewer. They mix up who and whom. The point isn't grammatical perfection. The point is natural communication. When you're practicing your 300 core words, focus on fluency over accuracy. Speak quickly and naturally, even if you make small mistakes. Correct grammar matters much less than clear communication and natural rhythm. You can always improve your grammar gradually over time, but you need to develop speaking fluency first. Don't let perfectionism prevent you from practicing the natural, spontaneous use of your core vocabulary. Let me address the elephant in the room that most English teachers won't talk about honestly. The traditional English learning industry benefits from keeping you focused on constantly learning new material. Vocabulary books, apps, and courses make money when you feel like you need more content. They profit from the illusion that learning more words equals better English skills. But this creates a cycle where you're always consuming new material instead of mastering what you already know. The 300-word method breaks this cycle completely. Once you identify your core words, you don't need to buy anything else. You don't need new apps, new books, or new courses. You just need to practice using what you already know until it becomes automatic. This approach saves you money, time, and mental energy while producing much better results than constantly consuming new vocabulary content. The social dynamics of conversation change dramatically when you can use simple words with complete confidence and natural timing. In real conversations, People care much more about your ability to respond quickly and contribute meaningfully than about your vocabulary size. When someone asks you a question, they want an immediate, genuine response. They don't want to wait while you search through thousands of vocabulary words for the perfect answer. They want connection and communication. When you can respond instantly using simple words, you keep conversations flowing naturally. You can ask follow-up questions, share related stories, express agreement or disagreement, and contribute your own ideas to the discussion. This natural give and take is what makes conversations enjoyable and memorable. Complex vocabulary can't compensate for the inability to participate spontaneously in conversational exchanges. Creating your personal 300-word list requires some strategic thinking about your specific needs and lifestyle. While there are standard lists of the most common English words available online, you should customize your list based on your personal circumstances. If you're a student, you might include words related to education and campus life. If you work in an office, you might include words related to meetings and projects. If you have children, you might include words related to family activities and parenting. The key is ensuring that your 300 words cover the topics and situations you encounter most frequently in your daily life. This customization makes your practice time more relevant and effective, because you're working with words you'll actually need to use regularly. Don't worry about creating the perfect list immediately. You can adjust and refine your list as you discover which words you need most often. The timeline for seeing results with this method varies depending on your current English level and how consistently you practice, but most students notice significant improvements within the first month. In the first week, you'll start feeling more confident with your chosen words. In the second week, you'll notice these words coming to mind more quickly in conversations. By the third week, you'll start using these words more creatively and in new combinations. By the end of the first month, your core words should feel much more natural and automatic. The key is daily practice, even if it's just for 15 to 20 minutes. Consistency matters much more than long study sessions. It's better to practice for 15 minutes every day than to practice for 3 hours once a week. Your brain needs regular, repeated exposure to build the automatic responses that make these words feel natural. Advanced techniques for maximizing this method include recording yourself speaking using only your 300 core words. This might sound limiting at first, but it's incredibly revealing. You'll discover creative ways to express complex ideas using simple language. You'll hear your own pronunciation and rhythm with these words. You'll identify which words still feel awkward or unnatural when you speak. Recording yourself also helps you track your progress over time. Listen to recordings from your first week and compare them to recordings from your fourth week. You'll be amazed at how much more natural and fluent you sound using the same simple vocabulary. This self-monitoring helps you stay motivated and shows you concrete evidence of your improvement. The ripple effects of mastering 300 core words extend far beyond just speaking ability. Your writing becomes clearer and more direct. Your reading comprehension improves because you can focus on meaning instead of constantly looking up unknown words. Your listening skills develop because you can recognize these core words instantly, even when spoken with different accents or at natural speed. Your overall comfort with English increases because you have a reliable set of tools that work in any situation. You stop feeling like an outsider looking in on English conversations and start feeling like a participant who belongs. This psychological shift is often more important than any technical language skill because it affects your willingness to engage with English speakers and seek out more practice opportunities. The maintenance phase of this method is just as important as the initial learning phase. Once your 300 words feel automatic, you need to continue using them regularly to maintain your fluency. This doesn't require formal study time. Just make sure you're having regular conversations, even if they're brief. Talk to yourself while doing daily activities. Narrate your thoughts while cooking, walking, or exercising. Engage in online conversations or find language exchange partners. The goal is to keep these words active and natural in your mind. If you stop using them regularly, they'll gradually become less automatic. But if you maintain regular practice, these words will serve as your reliable foundation for all future English learning. When you eventually want to add more sophisticated vocabulary, you'll be adding it to a strong, stable base instead of to a shaky collection of half-remembered words. Let me give you the exact step-by-step process for implementing this method starting today. First, find a list of the 300 most common English words online. There are several good lists available from linguistics research. Second, go through this list and identify any words you don't already recognize. Replace these with other common words that are more relevant to your life. Third, write your final 300-word list on paper or create a simple document on your phone. Fourth, divide these words into groups of 5 for daily practice. Fifth, starting tomorrow, work with your first group of 5 words. Create multiple sentences with each word throughout the day. Speak these sentences out loud whenever possible. Sixth, record yourself using these 5 words in a short natural monologue about your day or your thoughts. Seventh, after 1 week with the same 5 words, move to the next group of 5 words. Eighth, continue this process until you've worked with all 300 words. The transformation that students experience with this method often surprises them with its completeness. Sarah, the woman I mentioned at the beginning who knew 15,000 words but couldn't have simple conversations, tried this approach after years of frustration with traditional methods. She selected her 300 core words and committed to the practice routine. Within 6 weeks, she was having natural conversations with her American colleagues. Within 3 months, she was participating confidently in meetings and social events. Her vocabulary size didn't increase at all during this period, but her ability to use what she knew improved dramatically. She stopped being a walking dictionary and became a natural English speaker. The words she had been collecting for years finally became tools she could use effectively. Her entire relationship with English changed from academic study to practical communication. Think about your own English learning journey up to this point. How many hours have you spent memorizing vocabulary lists? How many words have you learned and forgotten? How much money have you spent on courses that promise to expand your vocabulary? Now imagine if you had spent all that time and energy mastering just 300 words instead. Where would your speaking ability be today? The beautiful thing about starting this method now is that you already know most of these 300 words passively. You're not starting from zero. You're taking words you already recognize and making them available for instant, natural use. This makes the process much faster than learning completely new vocabulary. You're building on existing knowledge instead of starting over with new information. The ripple effect of confidence that comes from mastering core vocabulary extends into every area of your English experience. When you know you can express any basic idea clearly and naturally, you become more willing to start conversations with native speakers. You stop avoiding English-speaking opportunities because you're not afraid of embarrassing yourself. You begin seeking out chances to practice because speaking feels good instead of stressful. You watch English movies and shows for enjoyment instead of just for study. You read English content because you're interested in the topics, not just to learn new words. This shift from defensive to confident language use accelerates your overall progress in ways that vocabulary memorization never could. You stop being a student of English and start being a user of English. Every successful language learner eventually discovers some version of this truth, usually after years of frustration with less effective methods. They realize that communication trumps vocabulary size every time. They understand that fluency comes from depth with simple words, not breadth across thousands of words. They recognize that confidence matters more than perfection. The 300-word method simply gives you a systematic way to reach these insights much faster. Instead of discovering this truth accidentally after years of struggle, you can implement it deliberately from today forward. You can stop wasting time on ineffective vocabulary building and start building real communicative competence. The choice is yours. But now you have the knowledge to make an informed decision about how to invest your English learning time and energy. Your English speaking journey doesn't have to follow the same frustrating path that millions of other learners have taken. You don't have to spend years collecting words you can't use. You don't have to feel embarrassed about your speaking ability despite knowing advanced vocabulary. You don't have to avoid conversations because you're afraid of not having the right words. The 300-word method offers a completely different path. One that leads to real speaking confidence in a fraction of the time. The students who have tried this approach consistently report the same outcome. They wish they had discovered this method years earlier. They're amazed at how much they can express with so few words. They finally feel like English speakers instead of English students. Today, you have the opportunity to start this journey. The only question remaining is whether you'll trust this process enough to try it for yourself.